Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Javihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivadhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivadhari Yasodanandana Brajagara Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajagara Ranjana Brajagara Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivadhari Janavalabha Girivadhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivadhari Janavalabha Yasoda Nandana Brajagana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Brajagana Ranjana Nandana Brajagana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Patavacharya Satarya Satyashri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Gaura Vaishnavinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Sakoshi Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki His confounder Srila Prabhupada Ki Shishi Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Vrindavan Dham Ki Mayapur Dham Ki Navadvip Dham Ki Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jamuna Mai Ki Ganga Mai Ki Tulsi Devi Ki Bhakta Devi Ki Shishi Radha Golokananda Ki Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Gora Premanandi All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. So Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda So we're reading from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. We're starting a new chapter 10, the trunk, branches, and sub-branches of the Chaitanya tree. So this is, the previous chapter was in a general discussion. Now Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami gets into more detail of the tree of Lord Chaitanya and the branches. Text 1. Let me repeatedly offer my respectful obeisances unto the bee-like devotees who always taste the honey of the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Even if a doggish non-devotee somehow takes shelter of such devotees, he enjoys the aroma of the lotus flower. Purport. The example of a dog is very significant in this connection. A dog, naturally, does not become a devotee at any time, but still, it is sometimes found that a dog of a devotee gradually becomes a devotee also. We've actually seen that a dog who has no respect even for the tulsi plant, indeed a dog is especially inclined to pass urine on the tulsi plant. Therefore the dog is the number one non-devotee. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement is so strong that even a dog-like non-devotee can gradually become a devotee by the association of a devotee of Lord Chaitanya. Srila Shivananda Sain, a great householder, devotee of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, attracted a dog on the street while going to Jagannath Puri. The dog began to follow him and ultimately went to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and was liberated. Similarly, cats and dogs in the household of Srivas Thakur were also liberated. Cats and dogs and other animals are not expected to become devotees, but in the association of a pure devotee, they are also delivered. So this is, the mercy never ends. This is constantly flow of mercy. There's a story, and we had this, of course, this one story here, but Shivananda Sain's dog that he took a liking to, and all the devotees were headed to Jagannath Puri, which is their annual pilgrimage from Navadvip. They're going to see Lord Chaitanya, so all his, childhood friends, all his associates who still live in Navadvip, Advaitacharya, they would go. So Shivananda Sain had this dog, but at one point they become separated, and he was a little attached to the dog, and he was kind of upset. But this dog went ahead and then got the association of Lord Chaitanya, as mentioned here, who attained the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, and therefore was delivered. An airplane came and picked this dog up and took it to Vaikuntha. A little bit, Vaikuntha got liberation. He didn't go to Goloka Vrindavan, which we know is hopefully our destination. So there's a story here that also in New Vrindavan, they had a dog. Typically, dogs, as seen, as Prabhupada mentioned in the purport, are seen as very unclean animals. They're not very clean. So this dog got the name Moochie. So that's what the devotees called him. Moochie, get out of here, Moochie. Moochie was hanging around, getting too close, And so Prabhupada, in one of his visits, he was, they're outside of the Bahulaban. And so Moochie was also hanging around, but the devotee said, get out of here, Moochie. And then Prabhupada said, no, stop. So that dog's a devotee. So we see just by the actions of a pure devotee, it changes everybody's consciousness. So everybody stopped looking at this dog as Moochie, this contaminated thing. They completely changed their consciousness, and everybody saw this dog as a devotee. And this is the mercy of a pure devotee. And how Prabhupada can actually, how this type of effect he had, continuously. It's just a small example of his ability. Not just these devotees, but the dog also got his mercy. So, as it comes to pass, at one point, Bahulaban's right there on a rural road, main road. The dog got hit, by a car. So then the devotees all, they got a garland. They put a garland on the dog, and they all stood around. They chanted, until the dog left his body. So this is the mercy this dog got, So whatever its future is, we know it's very auspicious, whatever it is. But this is all due to the mercy of a pure devotee. So it's amazing, doesn't matter what living entities. And we all should have this mercy and understand that all our activities should be done in such a way that we can bring auspiciousness to living entities. Even our chanting and everything. Even when we're outside, our chanting should be out loud so the birds can hear it, the grasshoppers can hear it, the trees can hear it, the grass can hear it. Because when you chant Hare Krishna, every living entity gets benefit. In the Chaitanya Bhagavat, Bhaktisiddhanta is pretty heavy. Prabhupada said he would not be that strict with us, he said, but he's really pretty strict in his preaching, and you can really see it in the Chaitanya Bhagavat and his purports. But he described in the chapters where you're dealing with Haridas Thakur, who is the Namacharya, he described there that this type of chanting, when you're chanting like this, you should be merciful to all the living entities. And that Sila Japa is a form of selfish Japa, because you're not receiving benediction. One can't think that the holy name has no potency. And therefore, because I'm such a fallen person, I have no, when I chant Krishna's name, I'm not helping any other living entity. That's the wrong mentality, because not only are we benefiting the other living entities, we also are engaging our tongue and our ears in the process of devotional service and chanting. So the mercy is spread to all living entities here, and specifically a dog is mentioned. But the point is that every time they hear it, they get benefit. And we can help every living entity advance in Krishna consciousness. Okay, so number 2. All glories to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityananda. All glories to Advaita Prabhu, and all glories to the devotees of Lord Chaitanya, headed by Srivas. The description of Lord Chaitanya as the gardener and the tree is inconceivable. Now hear with attention about the branches of this tree. The association of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were many, but none of them should be considered lower or higher. This cannot be ascertained. All the great personalities in the line of Lord Chaitanya enumerated these devotees, but they could not distinguish between the greater or the lesser. I offer my obeisances unto them as a token of respect. I request them not to consider my offenses. I offer my obeisances to all the dear devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the eternal tree of love of Godhead. I offer my respects to all the branches of the tree, the devotees of the Lord who distribute the fruit of love of Krishna. Purport. Sri Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami sets the example of offering obeisances to all the preacher devotees of Lord Chaitanya without discrimination as to higher and lower. Unfortunately, at present, there are many foolish so-called devotees of Lord Chaitanya who make such distinctions. For example, the title Prabhupada is offered to a spiritual master, especially to a distinguished spiritual master such as Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, Srila Jiva Goswami Prabhupada, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada. When our disciples similarly wanted to address their spiritual master as Prabhupada, some foolish people become envious, not considering the propaganda work of the Hare Krishna movement simply because these disciples addressed their spiritual master as Prabhupada. They became so envious that they formed a faction along with other such envious persons just to minimize the value of the Krishna conscious movement. To chastise such fools, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami very frankly says, Keha kari bahe nahi jeshta lagu krama. Anyone who is a bona fide teacher of the cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu must be respectful to the real devotees of Lord Chaitanya. One should not be envious, considering one preacher to be very great and another to be very low. This is a material distinction and has no place on the platform of spiritual activities. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami therefore offers equal respect to all preachers of the cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who are compared to the branches of the tree. ISKCON is one of these branches, and it should therefore be respected by all sincere devotees of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, the Kanista devotee is one who doesn't have the same respect for the deities and devotees. They see I respect the deities, but I have no respect for the devotees. Or I see them as different, distinctly. Here, they're getting more specific. It's like seeing distinctions between those sadhakas. And Irmala actually was given a class talking about the demons, some devotees disguised as demons, and that, talking about Pralamba. But she made the good point that it's not our position to make these distinctions. That's up to Krishna to make these distinctions. It's with a false ego, it's very difficult, because the fault-finding tendency is so strong. But as we continue to chant, these are some of the things in artas that we have to deal with, and we have to work on them. We have to consciously think about these things and work on them. This particular incident that Prabhupada's talking about here in this purport is kind of interesting because sometimes this stuff comes to me in groups. I read something somewhere and then something else will come along with it that supports it in another book. And so this particular case, that was about a week ago, not quite a week ago, on the computer here, and looking at YouTube. And they suggest things based on your viewing. They say, okay, maybe you would like to watch this. They don't say that, but they just suggest videos. So here's a video came up, whatever showed up, and it was Sridananda Goswami 3 years ago in France. And it's about a 2-hour video. There's no way I'm going to be able to listen to the 2-hour video, but I was able to hang in for about 28 minutes of it. Because I got so much different things to do. You can put it on in the background. Actually, you couldn't watch it anyway because it was just a picture. It was just a lecture. And so he talks about what happened. He talks about the history of ISKCON, and specifically the first 30 minutes about the relationship with the Gaudiya Math. This particular incident that Prabhupada's talking about right here. This happened in about 1970 in that era. He said he's just like a new devotee at that time, what's considered a new devotee. He'd been around about a year, I guess, or a little bit more than that, a year, and new initiated. But later on, when the story was there, but he knew about this incident, and it centered around a book that was printed by the Gita Press, a reprint of the Easy Journey to Other Planets, in which they put on the book A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. That's all they put on the book. And then Prabhupada saw the book, and he knew there was a problem. And even all the books back then, even from the Gita Press, they had it. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And what he tells a story that, some of his very early disciples, one of them was evading the draft, so he sent him to India. It's like 1968. And so because Prabhupada went back to India early, but he left that devotee there. But of course, there was nothing in India at the time, so he left him in the care of some of his godbrothers. And so it come about, there was this, what he was talking about, this title of Prabhupada. It was a big issue between his godbrothers, and his disciples started calling him Prabhupada. It got to a point where it had an influence on a few of his disciples that were over there, and somehow it infiltrated back to America, and then it got its way into the press where they thought it would be best to leave that off the book, because the Gaudiya Math thought Prabhupada is only for Bhaktisiddhanta, so they were given this kind of instructions. And as a neophyte devotees, it's not necessarily their fault. The point was that they were influenced by this, Prabhupada had actually left him in the charge and hoping that his care would be, his best interest would be looked at. And fortunately, it had some side effects. So anyway, Prabhupada had to correct this. He saw there's a fire in the house. That's what it was described. He saw this and had to be, because it's very important, especially in our Krishna consciousness, our neophyte stage, and even in our advanced stage, our respect for the spiritual master never changes. Actually, it grows through maturity. And so here Prabhupada saw a problem that had direct impact on the relationship with the spiritual master, because one's faith and one's respect for their spiritual master are equal. Your faith, as your spiritual master relationship grows, your faith grows in Krishna consciousness. And faith is an extremely important part of our sadhana. Everything begins with faith. And, either from Anartana Richa, Bhajana Kriya, Nishta, all of it. Faith is a big part of all that, and faith evolves over a period of time. In the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the very last purport there, the divisions of faith, I think that chapter is, Prabhupada talks about that mature faith is love of God. So when we take care of our faith, and our faith develops, and there's so many things that impact our faith, and that we have to practice keeping the weeds out as the creeper. We sow the seed and seeds and deal with the garden. We have to be very careful about those unwanted things that get in there, because we want our faith to nourish to the point that it becomes love for Krishna, pure love. So any questions? Anybody want to say anything about this? We can go on. I think that's probably enough. Because I read that like a week ago, and then I read this a couple of days ago. I said, uh-oh. It's just two things come at one time there. So that's the point I was making. Yeah, Krishna Priya. Yeah. So those on the line that summarized it a little bit. These things happen subtly. Krishna Priya was saying that, which is a good point, because especially in our neophyte stage, we're very susceptible, because we don't have that clear of understanding of the sadhana and sadhya. And that's why any of these types of disturbances or any questions, one should present them to their spiritual master and ask, what is this? I heard this. Is this correct? Is this, there's a conflict here or there that you might have heard someone. And that was also a big issue. Sometimes even, this Prabhupada said this, Prabhupada said that, and oftentimes he never said it. There's this, Prabhupada said syndrome that had that battle too. And oftentimes it was brought to Prabhupada. Well, I never said that. He had to clarify something. No, I never said that. So these things, if you read his lectures or listen to his lectures, these things all come out at times where it's appropriate. Okay, text number 8. The two brothers, Srivas Pandit and Sri Ram Pandit, started 2 branches that are well known in the world. Purport in the Gora, Ganadesh Dipaka. Srivas Pandit, Srivas Thakur, is described as an incarnation of Narada Muni, and Sri Ram Pandit, his younger brother, is said to be an incarnation of Parvat Muni, a great friend of Narada's. Srivas Pandit's wife, Malini, is celebrated as an incarnation of the nurse Ambika, who fed Lord Krishna with her breast milk. And, as already noted, his niece Narayani, the mother of Thakur Vrindavan Das, the author of Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, was the sister of Ambika in Krishna Lila. We also understand from the description of Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat that after Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's acceptance of sannyas order, Srivas Pandit left Navadvip possibly because of feelings of separation and domicile at Kumarhat. Text 9. Their two brothers were named Sripati and Srinidhi. These 4 brothers and their servants and maidservants are considered one big branch. There are no counting the sub-branches of these 2 branches. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu held congregational chanting at the house of Srivas Pandit. These 4 brothers and their family members fully engaged in the service of Lord Chaitanya. They knew no other god or goddess. Purport. Sri Narottam Das Thakur has said, Anya Deva Shraya Nahi, Tumare Kanu Bahi, E Bhakti Paramam Karuna. If one wants to become a pure devotee, staunch devotee, one should not take shelter of any of the demigods or goddesses. Foolish Mayavadis say that worshiping demigods is as good as worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but that is not a fact. This philosophy misleads people to atheism. One who has no idea what God actually is thinks that any form he imagines or any rascal he accepts can be God. This acceptance of cheap gods or incarnations of God is actually atheism. It is to be concluded, therefore, that those who worship demigods or self-proclaimed incarnations of gods are all atheists. They have lost their knowledge, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 7:20. Kamastayas tayir krita gyana prapadyate naya devata. Those minds are distorted by material desires surrendered to the demigods. Unfortunately, those who do not cultivate Krishna consciousness and do not properly understand the Vedic knowledge accept any rascal to be an incarnation of God. They are of the opinion that one can become an incarnation simply by worshiping a demigod. This philosophical hodgepodge exists under the name of the Hindu religion. But the Krishna conscious movement does not approve of it. Indeed, we strongly condemn it. Such worship of demigods and so-called incarnations of God should never be confused with the pure Krishna consciousness movement. So, this is important. There's another thing I just reading Chaitanya Bhagavat, and again, we have to be careful not to disrespect these also. This is not a license for disrespecting. This is explaining the qualitative difference of the Lord and his demigods, that they don't replace him, that our worship should be directly for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And here again, Bhaktisiddhanta, in a commentary on this is a chapter, and we'll talk about this again here a little bit more here if we get time, where the Lord is dancing. He takes the dress of Rukmini and he dances. And so it's pointed out there that that you can't disrespect. Vrindavan Thakur says, Lord Chaitanya did this in such a way that you have to respect all his energies, his internal energy and his external energy. This is one of the points that were brought out in that pastime. And that his external energy is just as important. As Maya Devi, Prabhupada often would say that his disciples don't have enough fear of Maya. In a sense, fear is a kind of respect. When you have fear of something, it's also a sign of respect. And when we make facilities, Bhaktisiddhanta points out also that when we make arrangements for sense gratification, and we gather paraphernalia for sense gratification, which we seek primarily in the material world, what we're doing is engaging these demigods in our service. And that's a form of respect, especially for a devotee. You want to engage these individuals because they are controlling the different aspects of creation. And that, in order to enjoy, there has to be a certain amount of austerity one has to perform, in order to reach a certain level of enjoyment is based on one's austerity they perform, how much sacrifice one performs. This is, and therefore, the result comes when one performs a sacrifice. This is basically deity worship. You perform a sacrifice, you get something back. Like Hiranyakasipu got something from Lord Brahma. His sacrifice and his austerity was so great that only Lord Brahma could actually come down and give him his reciprocate with him because it's so severe, his austerity. And because Krishna also warned him not to do that again in the future, because it was such a boon, was misused, all that power was misused by Hiranyakasipu. But he said, again, I did it anyway. He explains in the Bhagavatam Lecture when Narada Muni thought he was the greatest recipient of Lord Krishna's mercy. He said, no, look what I did to Hiranyakasipu, look how much problems that caused. And the Lord told me not to do it again, but then I did it again. I gave it Ravana so much power, So he's illustrating that he's not the greatest in his humility. But the point they're making out is that proper respect. Because really, these demigods are expansions of Krishna's associates in Goloka. They expand there into Vaikuntha, like Sridham becomes Garuda. All this Narada Muni, they all expand. Balaram expands. They all go to Vaikuntha. They all expand. And then they expand again into the material world. So they all become demigods. I don't know if they're all come from the material world. There are probably some sadhakas, for some reason, have made it, because we know that if you were a Brahmin for 100 lifetimes, if you perfect that yourself as a Brahmin for 100 lifetimes, you could become Brahma. So in your sadhaka, if you're that perfect, you can achieve that. It says also in the Brihad Bhagavatam Rita that if you could perfect your sadhana as Brahma for 100 lifetimes, 100 times as Brahma perfectly, you can be Shiva in one lifetime. So the opportunities are there, even to be demigod. So, of course, then when Krishna takes birth, Brahma tells them, you all come back here and also take birth. So some of these are the same, like Garuda, he takes birth again as Sridham, his expansion. So the cycle continues. So these are described, as counterparts. They're also described as shadows of the original forms in Goloka, and they represent that way. So. It's the main thing here is that we already in the first purport here was talking about respecting everybody. This is not a license to disrespect. It's respecting Krishna. Then all these other things are automatically taken care of. When you're worshiping Krishna, all these other demigods are getting their proper. You water the root, the tree, the branches get their nourishment also. Okay, so number 12. Another big branch is Acharyanath, and his associates were sub-branches. Acharyanath was also named Sri Chandrasekhar Acharya. And a drama in his house, Lord Chaitanya played the goddess of fortune. Purport. Dramatic performances are enacted during the presence of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But the players who took part in such dramas were all pure devotees. No outsiders were allowed. The members of the ISKCON should follow the example. Whenever they stage dramatic performances with about the lives of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or Lord Krishna, the players must be pure devotees. Professional players and dramatic actors have no sense of devotional service, and therefore, although they can perform very artistically, there is no life in such performances. Bhakti is what we're talking about here. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to refer to such an actor as Yartha Dali Narda, which means farcical Narda. Sometimes an actor in a drama plays the part of Narada Muni, although in his private life he is not at all like Narada Muni, because he is not a devotee. Such actors are not needed in dramatic performances about the lives of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Krishna. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to perform dramas with the Dvaita Prabhu, Srivas Thakur, and other devotees in the house of Chandrasekhar. The place where Chandrasekhar's house was situated is now known as Rajapata. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur established the Sri Chaitanya Chandrasekhar Acharya, established Sri Chaitanya Mat at this place. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu decided to accept the renounced order of life, Chandrasekhar Acharya was informed about this by Sri Nityananda Prabhu. And therefore he was present when Lord Chaitanya accepted sannyas from Keshava Bharati and Katwa. It is he who first spread the word in Navadvip of Lord Chaitanya's accepting sannyas. Sri Chandrasekhar Acharya was present during many important incidences in the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He therefore forms the second branch of the tree of Lord Chaitanya So there was Chandrasekhar there were 5 people that were informed about Lord Chaitanya's taking sannyas when he decided to take sannyas. And he told Nityananda to tell just these people. His mother was one, Chandrasekhar Acharya was one, Mukunda was one, Brahmananda Bharti was one, and Gadadhar. And these were the only 5. And so it was kind of interesting when Lord in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, the morning he left, he could tell by the air entering his nose it was the Brahma Murti hour, just by obviously it's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because we know that there's always temperature differences, throughout the day, but that particular day, of course, they have no clocks or nothing. And so it's very interesting. That was a little detail we find in the Chaitanya Bhagavat. That from that point, he got up and he left. And of course, those 5 knew. Of course, of the 5, they all went with him except for his mother. And then Chandrasekhar later was the one that came back and informed all the other devotees he had taken. So of course, they all knew after he left, because his mother had known. So the word got around that Lord Chaitanya had left. And of course, the whole place just, went into a state of depression and anxiety of separation from Nimai at the time, and not Lord Chaitanya, Nimai. I mean, the affection that they had. You can imagine talking about these dramatic performances and these plays and these kirtans and these ecstatic things that were going on. The Lord revealing himself to all these associates, and they were a very large group of associates he had. And then for him just to get up and leave them, the mood of separation must have been intensified by them. But then later he comes back to Advaita Acharya's house and sees the devotees again. But we're out of time, I guess. This performance is a pretty nice performance by Lord Chaitanya. He wouldn't let anybody. He said, the first thing he said is, nobody, unless you're a pure devotee, can see this. So at Advaita Acharya, he drew a line in the sand on the grass. He was sitting there. He drew a line and said, there was no way I can enter into this and see this drama. So all the devotees were thinking that. But then Lord Chaitanya bestowed his mercy and gave them all
Adi Purusham Namaha